Okay, so Ellie, we met up last time and you took me through what your eating pattern looks like. I think if I can just kind of reprise it, you can tell me if I've got this wrong. Because I looked at your food diary as well. It seems fairly similar. Um, you don't eat a very wide range of foods. Is that safe to say?
Yeah, no, I've definitely got my sort of safe 5 foods, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. And it looks like the key element to all of them is not what food group they're in or anything like that, but how much can you blitz them into being a very smooth food?
Yeah.
So you've got soup, you puree vegetables, you have very, very fine strained mashed potato. Um, Basically, the food needs to be not quite liquid, but getting close to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And it doesn't sound like that's, your weight is in the normal kind of range. It's the low end of normal, but definitely in the normal range, which means you're eating enough food, but your variety is very limited. Now, there could be nutritional issues around that. Um, and, as you know, I've emailed your GP to say, can we just make sure we get a blood test done, check on vitamins, check on levels of electrolytes and minerals, that sort of thing, just to make sure you're okay. Because we don't want you developing something like scurvy or something like that, just while we're trying to work on something completely different. But, medically, it's not a great diet, but it's enough calories that you're able to stay in the kind of normal zone. Um, do you find eating a bit of a chore?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't like eating really. I only really feel safe eating when I do, like I said, put things in a blender or have soups or just really soft mashed potato, like sweet potato that's just really soft. Otherwise, I get quite panicky. I wouldn't want to eat anything other than that really at the moment.
Okay, so a big reason behind this is about controlling your feeling of anxiety about food. Yeah.
Yeah.
What is it you're anxious will happen if you go for foods that aren't so, if you like, pulped down?
I'm just really scared that if I have anything that's even slightly chunkier, I know that sounds horrible, but it's just going to get stuck in my throat. Like, mashed potatoes, that's like as far as I'll go. And especially if it was mashed potato with lumps in, I'd feel really scared and panicked that it was just going to get stuck in my throat and I was going to end up choking on it.
Okay, and does that relate to that feeling you had when you were very young? I think you said you were about 5 and you choked on a fish finger.
Yeah, and it was just the whole thing was just awful. It was terrifying, and I'm just so scared it's going to happen again.
Okay. So yeah, that helps us to understand how you might have developed some of the problem. How you developed the anxiety that's kept you pinned down to eating very fine foods. How have your family reacted to that over the years?
They've found it really irritating, really annoying, and they've tried to force me to eat more foods, wider range, but it's just made me even more scared. I think they've got the opposite reaction out of me that they wanted. But yeah, they've definitely struggled to get their head around why I'm doing it, why I only eat like soft food.
And have you tried explaining it to them?
Yeah, I've tried just saying that I'm just really scared to have anything else, but I think they just think it's a bit ridiculous. I don't know, a bit childish almost.
Okay. I think sometimes people get trapped in this pattern of, I do something because it feels helpful in the short term, what we call a safety behavior. It makes me feel safe immediately. But then it can have longer term consequences that become more problematic. Like, I've choked on a fish finger, therefore I don't want the fish finger. And maybe I don't want anything else that's too solid either. So I'm going to back off from those foods because they scare me. And that can, if you're a parent, one of your basic roles is feed your children. That can make parents feel, oh my God, I'm failing. I've got to try harder. Which may be why they were pushing you to eat and maybe pushed you even further away from some of those foods? Can you remember particular foods that tried to get you to eat when you were about
Um,
5?
I mean, probably same as most kids, trying to get me to eat my vegetables, broccoli and stuff. But like again with broccoli, like I could eat broccoli as long as it was like boiled and like mashed, but like an actual piece of broccoli, it's just so hard, and it's just no, wouldn't just wouldn't eat it like that.
Okay. And has there ever been much of a change in that over the past? Well, you're 20 now. Um, has there been much change since you were 5 in the way that you react, in the way that they react?
They've just basically just let me get on with how I eat now. They've just sort of come to terms with this is how I eat, and they don't try and make me do anything else now. Obviously, I'm a bit older, so I can do a bit more what I want, but yeah, they just leave it now.
Okay. I'm going to ask you what's going to sound like a really daft question, but it's one I've encountered when I've worked with people in your situation before. How many blenders do you have at home?
I've got like at least, well, I've got two, I think, mostly because I'm scared that if one breaks, I wouldn't have another one in the house.
Okay. Have you ever upgraded blenders just to make sure things were even more mushy?
Yeah, so I've got my really expensive one that I use. That was like my upgrade that just basically turns everything into a liquid. And then I've got my old one that still works, but I'd prefer not to use that one.
Okay. Okay, yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense because you remember what I was saying about safety behaviors? The safety behaviors there are, oh God, what if my blender doesn't work? Get a backup.
Mm.
And what if it doesn't crush things down enough? What if the puree isn't fine enough? Maybe I'll choke again. Buy as expensive a blender as I can. But I've worked with people who've had multiple blenders and they've even put the same food through different blenders in order to get it as mushy as they can, to get it totally smooth. Um, but it's not, from the sound of it, it's not particular taste or anything like that. It's the texture of the food that scares you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Like I said, it's not necessarily the broccoli. I can eat broccoli, but it's got to be pureed, basically.
Yeah. Okay, Ellie. I think I get the idea. I mean, like I was alluding to last time, I think what you've got is this thing called ARFID. And there are different ways of presenting. It's avoidant food. I've got to remember this one, avoidant restrictive food intake disorder. Always get that wrong. Um, and it comes up in different ways. Sometimes it's about people not liking particular foods. That doesn't sound like you, but other times it's fear about the consequence of eating a food. And in your case, sometimes that can be about it will make me sick. Sometimes it could be about it will make me ill. Sometimes, as in your case, it will make me choke. Yeah, I'll choke on the food. And all of those things are anxieties that people deal with in different ways. Yours is blend the food until it's edible, but completely mushy.
Mm.
But you're 20 now. And while you were probably told it will go away when you were a kid, um, doesn't seem to be going away, but it does seem to be starting to have a bigger impact on life. So tell me about ways in which life is constrained by what you can and can't eat.
Well, obviously, I'm 20, so I'm like currently in university, and it's again, I just like living in shared houses where I've got to have my blender and blitz food before I eat it, or make sure that I just eat specific foods that are really soft, like just having soups, things like that. It's just it's embarrassing for one because I can't like share and cook meals with other people, and it makes me feel like a bit of a child that's so fussy that they have to have their food blended. But just like it's just the panic of like, what if someone asks me out to go for food and they're not going to have soup on the menu, or things like that. um it's just always on my mind. I've just always got to think, will there be a blender if I go to my friend's house, or if I go on holiday, is there going to be a blender there, or like will the cuisine have plenty of soups and soft food? It's just something I've always got to think about.
Can you name me any local restaurants or eateries that you and the other students would go to, which have those kind of soft foods?
I know, like, I've got my bank of places that I feel safe going to. So I always prefer to be the one to say, oh, let's go to this place or that place, because I know that I can get food there. But if someone said, oh, there's this place I really want to go to, and it's like a fried chicken place or something, like they're not going to have soup on the menu. And I just have to make excuses as to why I can't go, basically.
Okay. So how is life going for you, given that you were coping okay with this when you were younger, but now things are happening in life, you're growing, your life is getting wider, but your ability to eat isn't getting wider. What's the impact for you in terms of that quality of life thing?
Well, I see it just mostly in my social life. It's just, I've always got to consider, are we going to get caught out and have to go for food somewhere that I don't know? And I don't know if this sounds silly, but sometimes I feel like it's more expensive the way that I eat because I have to blend my food. I need more, I feel like I need more food. Otherwise, it's just like, you get a whole broccoli, you can blitz that into a soup and it's not that filling. Like I can't eat bread with my soup and things. I need to make sure I eat more of the soup. And it's just sounds daft having to think about all those things all the time. So yeah, I'm just always thinking about it. It's always on my mind.
I mean, I don't think that's daft at all. I mean, if you had a problem that meant that biologically you couldn't eat solid foods, that it had to be liquid food all the way through, my guess is that would be a big, big inconvenience for anybody. So why it wouldn't be an inconvenience for you, I don't know. I suppose the big difference is for you, it's a kind of this is how I'm coping with my anxiety. For other people, it would be this is me coping with my biology. Um, okay. I, th- I mean, I think that the issue here is, as I say, that this fear about what the consequences will be of eating, in terms of, in your case, choking on the food. And that evokes an awfully powerful anxiety because it goes all the way back to when you were young. Um, and you choked on a fish finger. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. So the way we normally tackle something like this is to get you slowly to work towards more solid food. Um, honestly, I don't know if you're ever going to want to eat a fish finger again in your life, but that doesn't matter. There are other foods which will give you more diversity, will let you go with your friends if they say, let's go to a chicken place, for example. Um, but the key thing is going to be about learning that the food that you're actually developed your terror about is way, way away from where you are right now. If you think in terms of what we call a hierarchy, a solid lump of food like a fish finger is up here. It's the scary thing. And then right down at the bottom, you've got the I can puree broccoli and it will be okay. So that's not anxiety inducing. The one at the top is very anxiety inducing. Is that a fair summary?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Okay. The point I want to reinforce before we talk about how we do this clinically is there's your feared food, the fish finger. Here's the food that you're prepared to eat, the very, very smooth blitzed food, etc. However, in between here and here, there's a huge array of foods that you've never actually choked on.
Mm.
But it's like you've kind of gone, oh my God, that was terrifying. Anything I associate in terms of texture, color, flavor, etc., that you associate with the fish finger becomes scary. So you don't say, okay, I don't like this, I'll go here. You'll eat, other solid food, but not fish fingers. You actually go all the way down here and will only eat very, very mushy food. That's a big, big safety behavior. But it also means that you can't learn that there's a lot of foods up here that have never attacked you in the way the fish finger did. Does that make sense as a way of understanding the difference in where you are right now and where things were a problem?
Yeah, and I suppose I'm just being like extra cautious and that I don't want to risk it because it could happen with other foods. That's why I avoid it, I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, it could, which is why I would not say, all right, there's your fish finger, here's your chicken nugget. Chicken nuggets are safe, go for it. But I would also say, don't just say, okay, well, I'll have broccoli with, you know, something like seeds on it or something like that, something solid but tiny, because that won't teach very much either. So what I'd like us to do is, and I want you to work on this for homework, we'll refine it next time, is I want you to draw what we call a hierarchy from the most scary food you can imagine. I think we know what that's going to be. Fish finger, perfectly reasonable in the circumstances, all the way down to where you are right now. But you need to put in foods that are a bit scary, oh, very scary, a bit scary, less scary, absolutely no real terror, no real terror, no real terror, no real terror. And what I want you to do is to go from the scariest to the least scary so that we can start working our way up that hierarchy so you can try out foods that you've never had a problem with before, um, and learn actually that food's okay. However, you're 20, you've got life to get on with. So I'm going to ask you to think about this one, which is where on that hierarchy would you start? Would you start by taking the broccoli, blitzing it, and maybe blitzing it 2 seconds less to add slightly more stringiness about it? Because going that slowly could take you years.
Mm.
Or do we start not down here with broccoli, but somewhere up here in that zone where you've never actually had a problem with that food before? Um, and it might be a food you tried when you were 5. It might be a food you'd never tried in your life. So you mentioned bread earlier, for example. Have you ever had the unchoking effect with bread?
Mm, no, well, it's hard to say because I feel like I've been avoiding it, but no, not really.
Okay, so you've not had it, but you're still worried about it.
Yeah.
So let's imagine bread is somewhere up here in your hierarchy. Okay, it's solid, but it doesn't have to be too solid. Okay, pick me 3 types of bread: the most scary, the least scary, and the one in the middle.
I feel like a crusty sort of loaf would be scary because that's quite hard.
Okay, so something crusty or like a sourdough loaf or something like that, something that's quite
Yeah,
tough, etc. Is
yeah.
that your highest or your lowest?
That's my highest. Yeah.
Okay. What's your lowest of the 3 types of bread?
Lowest, I suppose, would be like a really like soft, like a floury bread bun type thing. I think
Okay,
that's
so
the one.
something like, I don't know, a white loaf of bread that was kind of very kind of not exactly resilient. You know,
Yeah,
like a white loaf that you might buy from the supermarket,
yeah.
or a white bun that you might buy from the supermarket. Okay. What would be in the middle of those?
I feel like probably similar to the white loaf, but it might be more like a denser brown loaf with seeds in. That would be a bit scary, but not as scary as like the big crusty roll.
Okay, so kind of, yeah, you've got the kind of bland white bread, you've got the maybe granary or seeded bread, and then you've got the crusty or sourdough bread.
Mhm.
Have you ever choked on any of them?
No, I haven't.
Okay. Can you imagine ways in which you might start out by making them less threatening?
I feel like I would make them into smaller pieces and just chew them a lot before I eat them.
Okay. I'd be tempted to start with, either that approach or saying, do you know what? I'm going to use these to spice up the soup that I make, the broccoli, etc., or whatever soup you go for. It could be any of those things. I don't know because right now we're just speculating around how you lay out a hierarchy.
Mm.
But what I'd like to suggest is that between now and next time, you think about that gap between the fish finger that you choked on, the very mushy food that you eat now, and think in terms of other foods. Take a walk around the supermarket if you can't remember what other foods look like. take a walk around the supermarket and think, okay, what could I put on that hierarchy that would just work its way up? And we're not going to start right at the top, but it's also important for you to see your life developing. We don't start right at the bottom and spend ages going up. So we need to find out where your anxiety starts hitting, and then start maybe adding in the food from there.
Yeah.
How does that sound as a piece of homework?
Just doing the list, I can manage that. I think that's the
Okay,
easy step, I think.
that's absolutely fine. That's all I'm asking you to do right now. But have a think about, with each of those foods, which of them you think I've got any reason to be afraid of, and which of them is I can't really think of why I don't eat them. That was maybe the 5-year-old's decision. Maybe the 20-year-old is going to say, well, maybe there isn't a reason I can't try them. I don't want you to do any changes to your eating yet because I want to refine that hierarchy first. But that's what I like to start us off with, and then we'll start somewhere up on that hierarchy, adding in those foods and seeing which you like, which work for you, and finding out whether they cause you any great grief or distress. Now, your temptation at first might be to say, well, I could do it if, say, my dad's around or my mum's around, because if I choke, they'll be able to help me. And that may be part of the hierarchy to build in. It may be that I can have bread, and I won't be so anxious if I know someone's around, but then bread without someone around is more anxiety inducing. Build that into your hierarchy. Because eventually we need you to be able to eat whether your mum and dad or your friends are around or not. So, are you happy to give that drawing up the list a go?
Yeah, that all sounds okay. Yeah.
Okay, the next time we'll take a look at the list. Chuck a lot into it, lots of different foods, maybe 20, 30, something like that. And then we'll see where it looks to be next time.
Okay.
Okay.